My lighting, is that any better?
Yeah, it's better. So, okay. All right, everybody, we'll get started in about 3 minutes.
My lighting, is that any better?
All right, folks, we'll get started in about 2 minutes. 2 minutes. All right, folks, we are going to get started and jump into today's session. Welcome to the second edition of XenTegra Bits and Bytes. I'm your host, Pete Downing, and today we're going to be talking through are you remote worker ready? And we're going to talk on how XenTegra is trying to enable the remote workforce. And I got a great guest and longtime industry friend and longtime friend. Trevor and I have known each other quite a long time. It's hard to believe that, Trevor, but welcome. And can you give a little introduction on who you are and what you do for XenTegra and a little history on yourself in the industry?
Yeah, thanks, Pete. So, we've definitely had our put some time in here in the industry for sure. So, so I lead. I was with Citrix for a number of years, like Pete, probably close to 10 years, and different engineering roles and business development type roles. So, but joined XenTegra close to 5 years ago, and I lead up our managed services practice and hosting side of our business.
Cool. Well, thanks for taking time to join us today. I know you're a busy man, and you probably got a lot of better things to do than hang with me for an hour, but I appreciate you taking time. And, you and I got a fun history. We actually worked way back in the day at Ardence together. Remember that? And we were lowly SEs trying to make Ardence work in streaming endpoints. Those were fun times, right?
Those are good days, right? That's
yeah.
Taking Ardence from PCs to Citrix host servers. It was pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, it was fun. All right, so let's dive in. We're as always, we encourage question and answer today. There is a Q&A dialogue. We definitely recommend you throw questions into the dialogue because that will keep the conversation interesting and keep us potentially on our toes with some good questions. So please do ask questions, and we encourage the questions. As far as agenda today, I got a pretty cool agenda. We're going to be talking a lot about, desktop as a service, remote desktops, how does collaboration tools fit into the whole notion of VDI? And we're going to leverage Trevor's experience across the industry with some of his customers and mine as well. So we'll have a little fun with that. If you haven't already, check out webinars.XenTegra.com. We got a great lineup coming up. We got a lot of great guests on the horizon. So please feel free to register. Events.XenTegra.com. If you got some time tomorrow, I highly recommend you check out the Nutanix workshop we're offering. It's about a 4-hour workshop and includes hands-on labs. So if you have some time tomorrow, Friday, please sign up. Harvey Green is our host of that alongside of Nutanix. And then also check out podcast.XenTegra.com. We got a lot of great podcasts, about to post a new one today on Citrix, and we deep dive on Citrix licensing. I'm actually one of the guests on that alongside of Trevor. Actually, we're talking about Citrix licensing and what. And yes, we do give away Uber Eats gift cards, vouchers. And for those who attended yesterday and today, we can bundle those into one, so that makes it a little easier for you. So we will confirm those in the next 24 hours, and Megan on my team will get those out the door. And then, yes, we are doing a little giveaway in February. We're going to be giving away a PlayStation 5 for any attendee across all the different events. And so the more you attend, the more chances. And also I have some other cool swag packs, as I like to call them, that I'll send out to the various winners. And we'll talk about this later on, but bronco.XenTegra.com. Today's topic plays very nicely into this giveaway, and you can meet the requirement very easily, and I'll talk about how. All right, so let's have a little fun. We're going to have some polls. I want to get the audience involved here, and the first poll is just to get the audience warmed up. And again, as you guys take time to answer these, no one on the other side can see who's answering. All answers are anonymous, and no one can see the data or who is answering. So the first question is, hey, this is my first XenTegra event. So if you're a first-time attendee, please indicate that. Just love to see new attendees. And then I am and kind of fill in the role that fills your best title. I know I could put a whole list here. I just try to generalize it to make sure. Are you technical? Are you the decision maker? Are you a combination of the both? I like to call it jack of all trades, master of none. Are you a consultant, or are you one of our great partners? So give a couple more seconds on answering these polls. A lot of great answers already. And I'll do a last call for clicks, going once, going twice, and done. All right. So a lot of new folks on the phone. So welcome. This is one of my series I do. It's called Bits and Bytes with XenTegra. I try to pick industry topics and present them with a vendor, and not necessarily focus on a product per se, but more of a topic. My next topic is going to be focused on micro applications with Citrix Workspace. And that's going to be in 2 weeks from now. So definitely want to check that out and join us then. And then every Wednesday, I run what's called Webinar Wednesdays at 2:00 p.m. So check that out. All right. So Citrix information, just a little fun, what end user compute environment are you running today? Pick your primary. So pick your poison. What hypervisor platform are you using today? And, pick the one that fits you best. And I know, in some cases you might be running more than one. So pick the primary. And then finally, the last two are my enterprise is using Citrix Cloud and or Workspace, just trying to get an idea of the audience out there. And then finally, what is Citrix Cloud? So we'll let the answers roll in on this one. Give a couple seconds on allowing you guys to click here. And I like this new format with Zoom. For those who attended a lot of the sessions last year, I was a go-to-meeting guy. And I recently just switched over to Zoom and like the platform a lot better. All right, so we're going to do a last call for clicks. Going once, going twice, and final call. So we're going to end the polls. And we got a lot of interesting results here. So we got a lot of Citrix folks in the room, which is expected. A good chunk of VMware Horizon, so pretty interesting. And then a lot of, on the lower end, we got a good mix of RDS and Microsoft WVD. So not bad for a snippet of, data right now. Interestingly, no Nutanix AHV. I find that fun to see, but a lot of VMware customers in the room, which is expected. And then all over the board when it comes to Citrix Cloud and Workspace, maybe we'll change your view a little bit on that. And then finally, there's no real right answer here, but depends on the service you're using. And we're going to focus more on the platform side. All right, let's talk about industry stuff. So let's take a look at just some fun facts around the industry. So what does your Azure AD rollout look like? Are you doing cloud only identity or hybrid identity? Which infrastructure as a service are you considering today? And if none, just say no, still considering. But pick your primary one. I know you could be doing more than one. Pick the primary. What does your rollout for Office 365 look like, or M365 look like? And if you're doing like kind of a hybrid on premises, pick that one. If you're wholly Exchange Online, pick that one. If you're still on premise, pick no, and pick your right answer. And then finally, are you Google Cloud, Google Chrome Enterprise customer using Google? And then finally, last two, what is your remote worker strategy? And then finally, are you doing any type of thin computing, thin devices in your production today? Are you an Agile customer? Are you a Wise customer, HP, so on and so forth? And Pi is an interesting one now because Agile now supports Pi devices. You can see a couple over my shoulder actually behind me right now. So, all right, last call for clicks. Going once, going twice, and last call. All right, so we got a lot of cool results here. But let's highlight a couple. So a lot of Azure folks in the room, but still see a heavy presence of AWS. I just got off an interesting call with a customer about this and talking about Microsoft licensing and et cetera on that front. If you're an Exchange on premises or hybrid customer, and I use the term fast track, and you don't know what that is, you definitely want to check that out. And if you have any questions at all, please follow up post session. We can highlight what is fast track and how that can help you. And then a pretty even spread on this remote worker. It's funny. It depends on the audience, I think. But a lot of us are still remote work. And I don't foresee that going away. And then still a lot of folks, have no thin strategy, and we can, if you're interested, feel free to ask around that. So there's our polls for today. Appreciate everybody taking time to partake in those lovely polls. It just helps us with anecdotal things we can point to when we're doing our fun discussion. All right, so let's talk about social media. If you're not following XenTegra, myself, Trevor, feel free to connect with us. We're all nice guys and would love to get a follow. We try to post meaningful content to the various platforms here. So definitely give us a follow if you have a minute, and please follow some of our partners. All right, so let's talk about some challenges. And then we're going to pause to have a discussion with Trevor on some challenges and how does desktop as a service enable this. And I think these are all great challenges here, but there's one big challenge right now that hit us pretty drastically last year with the whole pandemic. But even before that, you had things like BYOD. How do you deal with this? How do you deal with remote workers and branch office workers? How do you deal with engineers who might sit in another country for your company? Things like that. And there's a lot of different challenges we have to consider as an IT department and as an IT arm of any company. And everything from PC refresh, like I always bring up the question of why do you need Windows on the endpoint? Why? If you're using Windows to connect to Citrix, SaaS app, VMware, WVD, or all the above, then why do you need Windows? Why not make it a dumb endpoint and just manage Windows in the data center? Laptops, there's a lot of laptops out there, look at the users. How are they using the laptops? Contractors, how do you deal with contractors and locking down their access? Call centers, how do you, make a call center flexible and agile, right? Those are new terms coming into the IT world. But, COVID came and threw us a huge curveball and forced us to go pretty hardcore remote last year. And a lot of us still are. And if you look at the kind of the strategies, and this was a Forrester report done by Citrix and Forrester, you can see some of the top things here range from, you want to increase your security posture. You want to look at how do I leverage cloud? You want to improve your use of data analytics and technology, right? You want to reuse and redeploy some existing IT because you got to save some money, right? So there's a lot of things in this list that I think everybody can agree to and identify with on things you're trying to do in your own environments. And yeah, Citrix Workspace is a great shim here. And we're going to talk about how we're enabling Citrix as a managed service. But let's face it, the change isn't going anywhere, and employee experience is the most important. And let's face, I live by a simple mantra: if the users are not happy, then the IT department's not going to be happy, right? And so, we really need to focus on how do we enable our end users to be successful. And if they're happy, guess what? They're going to become viral adopters of anything we put in front of them. So we got to make sure that our end users are happy. It's gone are the old days of IT when I used to hand a laptop to my user and say, here you go, deal with it, right? The users have more control now, it seems. But let's level set here. What is infrastructure as a service? What is platform as a service? And what is software as a service? And I won't get too deep into this, but really the goal here is, are you looking to run compute, like for example, compute inside of the Azure stack in the Azure cloud? Then you would be looking more at infrastructure as a service. All right. But let's say I want to leverage Citrix Cloud and I'm going to do Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Service on Citrix Cloud. That's a platform as a service, right? And then let's say I'm a OneDrive customer. That arguably is a software as a service, or a Workday customer, or a Sudi Expense is what we use. So, that's an example of software as a service. So understanding the differences is key. And if you're interested, I run a workshop monthly on, Azure and Azure fundamentals. But let's talk about desktop as a service. And I'm going to pause in a minute and get Trevor's point of view. But, if you look at the benefits of desktop as a service, there's everything from, hey, I can get to my desktop from anywhere. I can spin up a desktop, or go to a managed service provider and say, hey, I need 20 desktops. I can predict my IT costs. I can control the experience. I can control the security, and I can be agile, right? So if all of a sudden, boom, tomorrow we all had to go remote again, are you going to be able to address that need? And that's where desktop as a service comes into play. So Trevor, I'm going to bring you into this and ask a fun question to kick off today's conversation. So what is desktop as a service to you? And what are you seeing in the industry when you deal with some of your customers? Because let's face it, desktop as a service can mean a lot, especially if you're a managed service provider.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's a loaded question, I think. So, for us, we're, this is right in our wheelhouse. This is what we focus on. And essentially it's a solution that is turnkey, right? It's the easy button, versus having to build it out, build up the infrastructure and license out all the pieces and parts, right?
Yep.
And then doing ongoing management of it, right? So, and I think everybody gets that. I think one thing that probably sometimes gets misconstrued. I think it gets pushed as the easy button, and it's almost like a siloed type solution, like hey, I'm going to go out and get Salesforce, subscription. Well, it's a little bit, obviously we all know that, there's the workload piece that that someone has to manage the apps and the actual desktop underneath. So, and then it has to communicate with the backend servers that company uses and the user data and all those pieces. So that all has to be typically in a close proximity. So that's, I think that's where I think it gets a little less easy, I guess, but at the same time, it's a whole lot easier than doing it, building it out yourself, for sure.
Yeah. And so, in your mind, like I would say there's kind of a lot of different versions of what I would call desktop as a service. So XenTegra offers a managed cloud, and it happens to be in our data center, but we can full stack manage everything from the VDI all the way up to the Citrix environment. So that classifies as desktop as a service. But then on the flip side, Citrix has Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Service for Azure, which is essentially the customer can go and say, hey, Citrix, I want to spin up desktops on Azure, but have you manage it and have it in your Azure instance and pay you the consumption. So that could be another example of desktop as a service. And then you have the other extreme, which is, we'll mention our friends over at Amazon workspaces, right? So that's another example. So there's a lot of different ways we could slice and dice desktop as a service is really where I'm going with this. And curious to see, like, do you think that, what's a good, can any customer use desktop as a service, or is there a threshold in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. But here's the gotcha, right? So where is their data center today? What's their data center strategy? What is, I think that plays a big part into it, because we have larger customers that we've basically taken our Daas blueprint and dropped it into their data centers, right? Yeah. So we manage it, firewalled off from their existing, environment. So, and then I think that's really talking to those people that are, larger, right? Not always, but because I think what we're seeing a lot on the smaller end, let's just say, 200 to 500. A lot of those guys are moving to the cloud or moving into an infrastructure as a service provider. That's more common. So that typically is all in. Hey, we go ahead and migrate those servers over, and then we stand up the desktop as a service side by side, and that could be in our data center, that could be in Azure. We're a hybrid Daas provider. So and there's a couple of big reasons why you might do one or the other, but
nice. Yeah. And so basically the summary here is desktop as a service can be in your data center. It can be in Azure. It can be a managed offering from vendor A or vendor B. It's, and we can enable that through our blueprint strategy. All right. So let's dive into the next topic, Trevor. And I think you're going to like this one. So, there's a lot of other challenges we have to consider when we're looking at IT, things like unpredictable expenses, hey, we're reliant on one particular person. And I bet if I ask the question, is there one person in your organization that if that person went away, they went and got a new job or decided they were going to retire or just said, you know what, I'm going to go be a farmer. You're going to be like, oh my God, I don't know what he or she does. Right. Is there a business continuity plan? So if all of a sudden tomorrow we all had to go back to 100% remote and had to be remote, could you do it? Hey, I want to use my tablet and my own phone. How do I deal with these things? Right. And how can I be productive outside the office? And I mean, all these topics can yield a lot of different conversations, but really the thing here is, hey, we're a CSP. And so really the question you need to ask yourself is a CSP model right for you as a customer? And Trevor and I are going to talk about this in a minute. And there's a lot of things to consider here. There's things that are like, hey, are you in the process of refreshing your data center? Are you looking at OpEx versus CapEx? So operating expenses versus capital expenses. Are you looking away from you don't want to own anything anymore, right? Are you looking for consumption based? You want monthly billing? Are you looking to just go all in with cloud? Is there an app migration that you're working on? Or, hey, I don't have a big IT staff. I need help, right? And so, if you look at the reality of today, there's a lot of things here, and I'll just cover a couple here. That IT is a large fixed cap expense, and I bet if I were going to talk to any of you, you have either the CEO of your company or your boss or your CIO or CTO saying, hey, we need to find ways to lower costs, especially with this whole remote worker conundrum. How do you maintain and do maintenance on all these various products that you own, et cetera? So there's a lot of different things that we want to make the new norm when we move to tomorrow's IT. So here's a cool analogy on how to understand what is Citrix service provider model and why you can look to work with a company like XenTegra if you're looking at a pay as you grow or pay as you go model. So there's two models. There's, look at it as you're doing OpEx instead of CapEx. So think of it, you're leasing a car. You really want to buy this high-end car. You can't afford to buy it brand new, but you can afford to lease it. And then eventually you want another car and you're going to go and get another car and you want to trade in and get the better model. So think of it as a leasing the car. But if you want to bring it down to a monthly consumption, you think of it as paying for a glass of wine per bottle of wine. And, you're going to have a slight cost savings, but less flexibility. So, there's a lot of things you can do to make up for that less flexibility. And that's where working with a company like XenTegra is going to help you. So there's a lot of things you gotta consider when you look at this. And I'm going to talk about these with Trevor in a minute, but if you go to CSP, do you have to buy new desktops and software? The answer is no. And it all depends on what you're trying to do. How do I get information? Is it secured? There's a lot of things we're doing to ensure the data security, but we're not going to we might not even take over your data. Maybe we're going to take over the VDI piece. Will this make my job obsolete? Heck no. There's plenty of other strategic things to do in IT above and beyond managed infrastructure. And then, we back up our data in case of disaster. Isn't that enough? And so here's a great question for you, Trevor, and we can talk about this. What is the value of Citrix CSP in leveraging XenTegra? And what's a great example of a customer that you've worked with recently?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said a lot of the, called out some of the benefits, right? It's you're renting. It's kind of think of it as the easy button. So it's similar to any typical service provider licensing model. So most big vendors have those models, right? And they're really designed for obviously service providers that are putting solutions together. So whether that's a managed solution, or whether that's they're hosting an application, and they don't have they need a delivery method, and Citrix is that delivery method for that app. So they're kind of there's a lot of SaaS type providers that leverage Citrix to do that, right? So on the back end, you're not paying, as a customer of those services, you're paying the solution, price, right? Or whatever the bundle of that solution. On the back end, the service provider is going to, they're incurring costs for licensing for Microsoft, for Citrix, for VMware, for, the data center costs, power, all those things that go into delivering that. And it's essentially the easy button, right? You get to buy that, without all the hassle, and you get to get it by the drink, right? So it's based on, typically, not all are the same, but Citrix is based on the previous month usage. So, I mean, hey, I've over the years, I mean, when you go and buy, a lot of customers buy their licensing up front for 3 years. If they're using and maximizing all that, good, right? That means that, that's probably the best path for them. If they are consistently using what they purchased over that period of time, then depending on the size of customer, that probably makes the most sense. But for a lot of customers, they overbuy, and so this is really a very effective way for a lot of people, especially if they have peaks and valleys, and they're throughout the year, depending on, like, let's just say schools, they have times of the year that students are out, and the licensing drops dramatically, right? So there's that math exercise that you need to do, but the beautiful thing is, I think a lot of people aren't aware that there is a CSP program, but this gives you a tool to figure out what's the best vehicle for you as it relates to that. Now, I'll pause there for a second, but I think that's definitely part of it. There's a few with all service provider programs. It does require, like, certain things, right? So it requires that the provider is managing and owning that license, and there's detail. Every service provider program has different requirements, but it's definitely something everybody should at least check out to make sure that it's not really the best vehicle for them, but because it gives a lot of flexibility for sure.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is it's two things: one, flexibility, and two, working with an MSP like us, we can also build a custom solution that meets the need of the target client, right? So if you're whether in finance, you're in legal, education, etc. We can build a solution that not only meets the need of a consumption cost model, but also meets the need to meet their requirements. And we can even ebb and flow. We can have power users and task users, right? So we can basically do what they're going to do in their premises data center, on premises data center, in our cloud or in Azure, and do it, and then do it managed. And then one of the upsides is support, right, Trevor?
Yeah, absolutely. So it comes with XenTegra support, so you get an additional layer, and that goes with Microsoft CSP as well. So when you get licensing through us, subscriptions for those programs, they automatically come with that additional support. So I think that's a big pain point for everybody, to have, when you have to call into support, it's usually, I don't think anybody is like excited about that. And we just try to make it a little bit better, right? Hopefully, we're able to address your issue before we have to get the larger entity involved. But the
other analogy I like to use is we're not going to blame another vendor because we're touching all the vendors, so we can usually know what the issue is sometimes, and sometimes we got to pull both vendors in and work with both vendors in tandem. So so interesting question came in. I don't know how to answer this, but curious to see what you think. So the question from Travis is, in the government sector, the way funding works is harder for us to do things with variable monthly costs. In your view, is there a way to deal with that for hosted desktop as a service solutions, managed or unmanaged? Curious to see what your thoughts there. And yeah, I understand that where Travis is coming from, because typically they get a budget, they got to spend the budget in a period of time. And, if they don't spend it, they kind of lose it, kind of use it or lose it mentality. And Travis, keep me honest there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what we're talking about there. So if we're talking about like a public cloud consumption model, that's what that is difficult, right? You don't know what exactly what your costs are going to be every month. Now, with XenTegra, and this might be a reason why a customer, we might choose to go XenTegra Cloud versus Azure, in a Daas solution, is that, hey, someone needs a very stable, consistent price, right? And we're able to accommodate that through term commitments, and whether it's networking, storage, whatever, we'll go ahead and but yeah, and so it's still a little bit of a challenge. It requires us to do things a little bit differently, but yeah, that's an exact use. That's a very specific use case that we see pretty often, right? Because for that consistency.
Yeah, and he clarified it. He said, if let's say the budget, I'll just pick an arbitrary number here, is $10,000, and if they come under the budget, it's fine. But if they were to go over the budget, it's a nightmare. And that's the value of working with an MSP, is you can typically have a set budget and say, you can even say, hey, here's the cost for the year, and kind of lock it in, in a reserved instance almost model. And then where needed, you can add in other products if the budget allows, right?
Yeah, you got it.
Cool. So another question that came up, and do we see a lot of educational institutions leveraging thin clients? And I think the simple answer is it depends on the use case, Chris, but let me table that one. And, if you want, let's follow up post session, but I'd say, yes, I do see a lot of educational institutions leveraging, thin clients or thin devices, as I like to call them, because if you're using IGIL, anything could become a thin device. All right, let's talk about the next topic. So, with this conundrum of, being remote, and, here's a prime example. Here we are on a Zoom yet again. I was on a Teams right before this. I was on a Ring Central before that. That seems to be the day, right, Trevor? And so, behind the scenes, a lot of folks, that are looking across the different EUC platforms, the usual vendors are tried and true. They've been working on these protocols for years and years. And Citrix is a great example of that with the ICA/HDX protocol. And, common question we get is, hey, can I run these robust collaboration tools inside of a VDI session, or can I plug in peripherals? Can I do this? Can I do that? And, Citrix has put a lot of work into not only the protocol, but dealing with different peripherals, dealing with video, dealing with collaboration, et cetera, and making it work with all the various scenarios. And a great example of this is, obviously, if you're in healthcare, Citrix is a big functionality within the healthcare system. If you're in finance, et cetera. But let's just bring it out there. The HDX experience, or ICA, right? Protocol is all about how to optimize the user's look and feel if they're going to run an application on top of Citrix. And, the same would go for, VMware and PC over IP, or Blast protocol. And, I'd say RDP is, we'll say starting to get there, but, still need some help. But at the end of the day, Citrix has put a lot of time and effort into optimizing the user's experience when they're using tools like a Zoom, like a Teams within the VDI session. And, we can thank the multiple streams that are within the ICA protocol. And that's what allows you to not only optimize, and potentially if you have SD-WAN and Citrix SD-WAN for that matter, you can actually separate out some of these streams and put a priority on, for example, Teams and Skype, and say that if you got a Teams and Skype stream, you are going to optimize that stream over everything else. So that way it's as optimal as possible. But one of the other things is you can there's the network compression, there's command remoting, there's the ability to video stream in H.264. You can do image caching. So Citrix has put a lot of effort into enhancing the experience with collaboration tools, running video inside of ICA HDX, and the list goes on and on. I mean, plugging in that dictation device if you're in healthcare, or using your Bloomberg keyboard if you're in finance. There's a lot of different examples here, but Citrix has done a great job at enabling ICA HDX. And one of those things is what they call adaptive display. And, you can see just an example here in white, you have your video 3D graphics, in aqua, you have your images, and in teal, you have your text, right? And each of those are broken into various streams within the ICA protocol. So your H.264 is going to give you efficient video and graphics, within the stream. ThinWire is going to give you the most efficient information for using images, etc. And then overlay lossless is going to deal with text and avoid that blurry situation. So I'll share this link, but here's a great video of enlighten and adaptive transport, kind of the versus each other, and video performance. All right, and this will give you a great idea of how does Citrix do with video. So I'm going to pause there, Trevor, and ask a question. In your opinion, and I have my answer, but I want to see how you answer it. But can VDI handle collaboration tools like Zoom, Teams, etc.? And based on all your customers that you're working with, what is your recommendation? Because let's face it, we got a lot of great customers that we manage. And what are you seeing? And where does virtual GPUs fit in? Hey, we're undergoing a strategy in our own data center too, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. No, I mean, you definitely can do it, right? And is it not amazing that the Citrix ICA is still king, right? And I think everybody, you're like, well, what's it going to look like in 5-10 years? And we were saying that 5 and 10 years ago, and they keep adding to it and ultimately differentiating themselves beyond anything else out there. There's a lot of different remote protocols out there, and they can all deliver a desktop, right? But I think Pete just showed just some of the sausage behind the scenes, right? I mean, there's all kinds of protocols and technologies that make up a desktop experience. And so there's a lot of engineering that goes into making that, having something that really, hits all the different use cases, all the different application real-time voice and video. Like there's a lot, and it's not, this hasn't happened overnight. It's happened over, how long? I mean, they started developing back in the 90s, right, or even earlier. So, yeah, today, I think we've had the ability to do voice and video over Citrix for a decent period of time in different ways, right? They've had optimization pieces that enable you. Typically, they're offloading that to the endpoint and superimposing it. And so, from an end user's perspective, you don't see. There's not. You don't know that it's being redirected, but when you do that, there are some considerations, design considerations, and things like that. So I think over the years, a lot of people really haven't, I think as a whole, haven't done their real-time collaboration over Citrix, right? Even though they could. It wasn't, I would say, not until this year that people really got serious about it and were willing to commit. They're like, hey, we need to deliver a desktop experience that's the same as their regular desktop, right? They can't be going in and out. They can't be doing some of their work inside the desktop and then popping back out to do, a Zoom call or a Teams call. And so that whole idea is, I mean, everybody is trying to get to that place, and it's definitely doable, right? It's, there's optimizations for Teams, there's optimization for Zoom. And a lot of these, they all handle their, that video communication and those protocols a little bit differently. So there's those components that are out there to enable, as enablers to make this happen. And so Teams and Zoom are big, and they absolutely work. And then GPU is really the one thing that when you don't necessarily have the benefit of these optimizations I talked about, you got different types of solutions, WebEx, whatever it might be, that might not have this optimization. You can go, the GPU allows you to offload that H.264, whatever that might be. So.
Yeah. So so I'll say this, I've seen a huge uptick with the vendors in the space, and here I'm going to share my screen really quick and show this, but where there's a lot of documentation now out there, and I'll share these links with the audience on how to properly install, for example, Teams in a virtual desktop infrastructure. And there's a whole document dedicated to how to install and configure it, not only from the vendor, but on the Citrix side, right? And then there's also the same site for Zoom. Zoom has a whole section of their docs dedicated to all the vendors out there. I mean, look at this. I mean, it's pretty impressive. And I gotta say, out of all the vendors that I've seen, Zoom has done a great job at obviously ensuring they work with VDI. I'll say this, they get it, as does Teams. And then Citrix, Microsoft, and VMware have all put a huge effort into supporting, Teams, Zoom, Cisco WebEx, and Cisco Teams, et cetera, within their platforms. Now, another cool use case is I had a customer recently, put Zoom in the VDI session and then use an IGEL as an endpoint. And Citrix just recently enhanced their IGEL endpoint to not only support Zoom and Teams, but literally it's a tick of a button on the IGEL profile, and make sure you install Teams and Zoom the right way inside the master image. And the customer texted me and said, "Hey, now we're zooming." And he said, it was very good, and he was doing video and everything. So the takeaway here is it does work. And I guess if you're going to leave the audience with one kind of anecdote, what is one thing they definitely need to consider if they're going to do collaboration inside of VDI?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, you need to take a step back and look at how you're delivering your desktops. Are you doing multi-session hosted desktops, or are you doing single VDI? Honestly, you can do it either way, right? We typically are going towards a single instant VDI for the full desktop experience with GPU, and here's the reality of that, right? So you get into some of the video scenarios, and you might have CPU spikes or something like that. We don't when you have 10, 20 users on a box doing that at the same time, that can, it can lead to bad user experience, right? So we typically, ideally, we're going for a VDI delivery model. We're also looking at, and sometimes that, depending on what applications, UC or video applications that they're using, sometimes GPU is not necessarily required. Yep. So we might want to beef the CPU up for those. But honestly, ideally, we want some level of GPU, right? So you don't have to dedicate a whole GPU core to a user, but we leverage NVIDIA Grid, and we'll carve that up and give them, a gig or 2 gigs, depending on what they're doing. And just that little bit does an amazing job at just creating an experience that's just very, very much like your endpoint Windows 10 experience. So so we've got multiple customers that we've taken through that, and whether it's Teams, the common ones are Teams, Zoom, Ring Central, all these, and then doing YouTube videos and internal videos and stuff like that, and using kind of our blueprint that we have as it relates to kind of those key items. Like we're getting great feedback, which is, I'll be honest with you, that most people, the feedback if you went and took a survey out there, and maybe you can put this in your survey, like what their experience, ask the users themselves, like what that experience is, and they're probably, in general out there, if they're not doing kind of some of the things I've talked about, it's not a pretty picture, right?
Yeah. So as XenTegra is a customer of our own MSP, and I'll say this as the manager of the BDR team, the BDRs use Ring Central and our dialer inside the VDI, and it works fine. So just kudos to your team and what you guys have built. So now I just got to get myself on the VDI because I need a GPU. So I know a guy, right, Trevor?
Well, hey, you know a guy, Hey, the cool thing is that we just took delivery of the new Nutanix nodes that have GPU enabled. So we're gonna have some of the good stuff. When you're the provider, a lot of times the internal guys don't always get the good stuff, but we're changing that. Yeah.
All right. Well, if you have any questions on remote work, MSP versus CSP, or just anything for that matter, definitely put in the Q&A dialogue. We're going to have one more topic I want to talk about. But before we do, for those who don't know who XenTegra is, XenTegra was born out of the need to do what we're doing today. We want to enable the customer, but also be a true partner to all the partners we work with today. And Andy, our founder and CEO, like Trevor and I, worked at Citrix as well and was an SE, and just got tired of seeing his customers not leverage what they owned. And that's really a goal of XenTegra, is we want you to truly leverage the stack. And so we're a solutions focused company. We come in, we help you build a solution that meets your needs, but not only your needs, your end users' needs. And then, yes, we can bundle various service offerings behind them, whether it's consulting services, managed services, etc. And then, yes, I can sell you the various products we support. And we have a lot of great partners. So if you head over to partners.xentegra.com, you can check out all the great partners, but we have our core focus partners that we really double down on and make sure we are the masters of our own domain. Citrix, VMware, Microsoft, Agile and Nutanix are the top partners that we really hone in on. And not only do we go and implement these, but we use these in our own MSP. But I really live by the mantra of our job is to enable you meaning IT, so that your end users can be successful. Because let's face it, if they're walking down the hallway saying, man, I hate Citrix, then that project wasn't successful. So we need to get our users to be not only happy with what we give them, but viral adopters and be champions of what we give them. So here's a service that Trevor offers, and I want to pause in a minute, but we offer what's called Citrix Managed Services, and this can be done on premises, this can be done in Azure Cloud, and this can be done in our own data center. But also, you're getting behind the scenes a lot more than just a desktop as a service. You're getting infrastructure management. You're getting backup and disaster recovery, patch management, monitoring, and endpoint management. So we can even provide you with IGIL endpoints and or help you manage your existing endpoints. But best of all, you get tier 1 and tier 2 support depending on your contract and how you structure it. And Trevor has a mantra. Basically, we help our customers deliver and manage Citrix cloud, cloud workspaces is the number one focus, right? And we do this 24/7 by 365 days a year. So let's face it, do you like getting woken up on the weekends? I'm going to guess probably not. So why not wake up our guys instead? But we also help you maximize your VDI experience. We figure out what the use cases are, we figure out your requirements, and then we help you maximize these requirements and build them into a solution that is not only effective for your end user, but is cost effective behind the scenes. So Trevor, final question of the day. If you're going to leave everybody with a good anecdote, what is the value of working with XenTegra and our MSP? And what are some of the things you're doing, and why do customers love us?
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty simple. I mean, I think we're focused, right? We're focused on what we do, just like in any other industry. Or if you go to the hospital, you want to go to the specialist, right? So I think that's a part of it, right? So and we've got one of the largest specialist teams out there that's laser focused every day, day in, day out, whether it's consulting, whether it's sales, whether it's, providing support, managed services, hosted service, but we're not doing general managed services. We're not doing general consulting. We believe in, focus. When we go, and just examples of that, I mean, you've seen Pete do webinars with other vendors, right? That might be outside of what we're talking about here, but the reality is that we leverage other partners that we have in these areas of specialty, whether it's security. We leverage XenTegra, their managed SOC, and they're essentially doing exactly what we're doing, but they're doing it in their industry, and we partnered up. So we not only bring the solution, but we bring a lot of other great partners, whether it's XenTegra when it comes to Microsoft 365, migrations or consulting, on the Microsoft side. But yeah, I mean, we have a blueprint and you basically, when you sign up, you have the team, right? It's typically going to get whatever it is going to get addressed on the first call. But at the end of the day, if there's not a better team to have that, have that in the hands of, right? You're not going to get to a place where we don't have someone that can't address it for the most part.
Yeah, and I'm going to give a kudos to your team, and I'll do a little shout out here. He's probably going to kill me, but you got a great guy on your team, Brian, and Brian, he works hard, but he comes with a lot of experience. So shout out to Brian and kudos to him, and kudos to all your team. You guys put a lot of effort in. Not only are we selling MSP, we are a consumer of the product as well. So and nothing beats being able to call the help desk and getting helped when I need help, and it works. I'll tell you that. So any other examples you want to give is are you able to say, I know recently you went through a pretty stringent certification, how's that going, and can you talk about that?
Yeah, so we're just finishing up our SOX 2 Type 2 audit. So that's obviously we do managed services and hosting with financial institutions, and so we have to pass a lot of very stringent security and compliance requirements. So if you're in one of these industries, we've got you covered. We've been through it, so it's not going to be the first time, and we should be able to check a lot of your required boxes. But hey, just one thing that I want to add, kind of going back there. I mean, one of the things that we do add that I think that gets ignored sometimes is the fact that you can have Citrix Cloud, you can manage your own Citrix environment, but you typically have, you're going to Google things, you're going to get recommendations on, particular patches that which patch is is a stable patch, and but the reality is this solution requires so many layers, right? And so, kind of going back to the blueprint, when you sign up with us from a managed service or Daas, you're going to get when you go to make you're constantly going to be making changes, right? Patching for Windows 10 or server or whatever it is. Every patch is a disaster waiting to happen, right?
Yep.
So, and I think there's a huge value in what we're providing here, is that when we roll a new patch out, Microsoft patch, which is coming every week at us, we're going to do it in our test environment. Then it's going to be in our internal environment. Then it's going to be on a select hosted environment, and then we roll it that direction. And so you're not the one that has to take the hit, take the risk right out of the gate with a patch. And so I think that's a huge benefit as well, that, because I think most people, like, you can go get bring XenTegra in to do the project, and they'll set it up with our best practices in design architecture, and you're going to be happy and it's going to work all great. But then what happens, right? You're making changes like every single week, right? And that's where things kind of go sideways. So I would say that's a huge part of kind of the benefit of what we do.
Awesome. And so let's kind of end cap, because we have about 5 more minutes. So, I talked about this Bronco earlier, and if you go to bronco.xentegra.com, you guys can get put into a drawing to potentially win a Ford Bronco. And yes, we're giving it away. I'm actually been talking to the dealership as we speak. Later this year, we're trying to tie it to an event, but we're trying to wait and see if events actually happen this year. So, but if they don't, we'll come up with another clever way to do it. But anyway, there's one way you can get into the drawing is set up a meeting with Trevor and his team to talk through your needs for Citrix and MSP, and for that matter, even talking about Microsoft licensing and Fast Track. So one of the ways you can get put in that drawing is to set up a simple meeting. Another way is you can do what's called a micro assessment. I jokingly call this the XenTegra interview, and it's a great way to get to know us, how we work, why we do what we do, but also get a great artifact out of it. So we do a full SWOT analysis of your environment and hand you some great food for thought. And part of that could be, and this could also be coupled with meeting with Citrix, with Trevor and his team, and looking at your Citrix environment, your VMware environment, your networking, and potentially your Microsoft licensing. So some calls to action today. We are going to be following up with you. Definitely take some time to dig deeper. If we didn't cover what you wanted to today, reach out. We can set up a deeper demo. If you want to understand a little bit more on the MSP side of the house, reach out. We can educate you fully on what is XenTegra's MSP offering, can it fit into your strategy, and does it make sense? One of the things I love about you, Trevor, is you're honest. You'll get on a call and say, you know what? As a customer, you're better off buying the full licenses versus doing CSP, or the other way around. You should go CSP versus buying the licenses. So, you're gonna get a very honest assessment from the XenTegra team. And with that, I'm gonna do one final call for questions. And Trevor, before you exit out of here, any final thoughts you want to leave with our audience? Any food for thought before you take off and finish out the rest of your Thursday?
Yeah. No, I don't think so. I mean, I really appreciate everybody jumping on, and it looks like we have a big group here today. So definitely take advantage of some of the at least some of the free stuff that we have, and get to know us. I think you'll be really happy with what you find, and especially these assessments. They're free, and usually, a lot of value comes from them. So definitely take advantage of those for sure.
All right. Well, thanks, Trevor, for taking time out of your busy day. And thanks, everybody who joined me for the second edition of XenTegra Bits and Bytes. The next one is in 2 weeks from now, and I'm going to be talking about workspace micro apps, Podio, and some other fun topics as we dig into the great world of Citrix Workspace and what that really means. So with that, I'm going to say thanks, everybody, for joining me today. And as I always say, see you all on the flip side, and hope to see you on future events. Have a great day, everybody.